Hello, and welcome to the Argyle CXUS Leadership Forum. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. To ask questions throughout this session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our moderator, Jay Denhart Lillard, Marketing Director, Genentech. We are excited to have Jay and our panelists for a panel discussion titled Evolving the Omnichannel Experience. Welcome, Jay. Over to you.
Thanks, Nick. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to Evolving the Omnichannel Experience. I am JDL, coming to you from the Bay Area in sunny California. I've been a marketer for over 28 years, working in fast-moving packaged goods, biotech, healthcare, and a short foray into tech entrepreneurship. And I currently lead the patient experience in Genentech's neurological rare disease marketing organization. I've also been recently developing a global community practice for human-centered design across Roche worldwide. But enough about me. Let's meet our panelists for today, which include Mary Considine, the Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Development Officer of Ascenda Integrated Health, and apparently a sleep-deprived parent of a daughter traveling in Europe. Welcome, Mary.
Thanks so much, Jay. I'm excited to be here today. As Jay said, I'm Mary Considine. I have been a marketer for a very long time, largely in the healthcare world, and predominantly in behavioral healthcare. So I've definitely seen a lot of changes and a lot of evolution, particularly with the omnichannel experience. So I'm very excited to chat with Jay and the rest of our panelists today. So thanks for the nice, warm welcome.
Thanks, Mary. We also have Jenny Lee Fowler joining us, the Director of Social Media Strategy at MIT and a first-time author. Welcome, Jenny.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thank you. It's great to be here. Yeah, I have been in the higher ed space for, gosh, like more than 10 years now, but prior to, I was in TV news as a reporter and an anchor, and I did work for a Fortune 50 insurance company for a little while. So I think my experience expands a little bit beyond higher ed, but it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. And lastly, we are joined by Michael Butenif, Director of B2B Marketing at MasterCard, also apparently an amateur thespian. Welcome, Mike.
Hi, Jay, and everyone else. Really wonderful to meet with and engage all of you. As Jay mentioned, I'm the Director of B2B Marketing at MasterCard, formerly of Silicon Valley Bank, which was interesting, and formerly of IBM before that. And I've spent half my career in B2B marketing, and before that B2C marketing. So I've been around. And really excited for this topic. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mike. So we got a lot of buzz around the omnichannel experience lately. When we are not obsessing as a community over generative AI, it seems that we have had this term omnichannel marketing at the tip of our collective tongue for the past year. So I'm going to start off the panel today by just asking simply, from your experience, what does successful omnichannel experience look like? Mary, let's start with you. What are some real world examples?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that is often forgotten, particularly when an organization's going from multi-channel to omni-channel, they're engaging new platforms, maybe working with new third parties or new agency, is sometimes that brand continuity is getting lost. And so particularly from like a healthcare standpoint, imagine getting an email from your provider that looks different from the patient portal and looks different from the scheduling platform. I think sometimes you kind of lose a little as you're growing and doing new things. And so taking it back to basics, I think, is one of those things that really ensures success in this area. In terms of like real world, I don't know if anybody does omnichannel better than Amazon, whether you are, online or offline. If you're someone who lives near one of those Amazon Go stores, I mean, it's pretty phenomenal that your app all of a sudden turns into your entry point, how you pay for everything. There's no cash register, no line, no nothing. You just put everything in your bag and, you walk out of the store and are charged on your, whatever your default card is, on your Prime app. So, to go offline to online seamlessly like that's pretty phenomenal. And one quick example, because you did mention my daughter studying abroad, on my Amazon app, I can easily switch the country, order things for my daughter. Again, utilizing the same technology, nothing changes. In fact, when I switch to French, it just says "Bonjour, Mary." It's the same app. Everything looks the same. I can order things for my daughter, press the button again, switch back to the United States, and then order things to get them delivered to my house. So again, it's that seamless experience. So I do use Amazon as kind of a real life great example of that omni-channel experience.
Awesome, Mary. That's a great example of getting that consistency right for consumers. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on the B2B angle?
Yeah, I mean, everything that Mary said applies. Everything, I really won't say anything that different because that was a wonderful response. But, generally speaking, I like to think of omnichannel as being universally accessible. I mean, no matter what the device is, whether it's digital, whether it's physical, and again, B2B side. So we're talking sales engagement, we're talking engagement happening at events, wherever that might be happening, whether it's between human beings or to mobile devices, etc. Number two, that level of excellence needs to continue throughout the experience from the first ad impression all the way through to customer engagement, the process of satisfying your customer and keeping them and maintaining them. And in B2B, that's especially important. I mean, it's important for both, of course, but that, as we all know from our marketing classes that we've taken, retaining a customer is just infinitely cheaper than acquiring one. And not doing that well after you've won the deal or won the contract or won that consumer is just it's heartbreaking, right? And then lastly, just doing consistency also. Mary spoke to this so well. Consistency across every touch point throughout that experience is absolutely important. It's critical, and it gets more and more difficult when you move from being, say, a single product SaaS company, whether it's B2B or B2C, to a global multi-business unit, multi-product portfolio company, where suddenly it just gets really, really hard to do that well. But when you look at it and it's that machine is humming well, you see that reflected in your NPS score and your customer satisfaction surveys, and hopefully in your referral rates, right? That happy customers will continue to stay, they'll rate you highly, and they'll refer you to their friends, family, or business colleagues.
Right. Excellent. Well, if it was easy, everyone would do it, and we know that's not the case. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you might face when you're creating that positive omni-channel customer experience, getting that universal experience, accessible experience all across that journey? So Jenny, let's start with you.
Sure. I think one thing that's challenging about this type of practice is that you want to make sure that all of the content is really optimized for every single channel. Like I think that if all of the content is exactly the same, and maybe the images are exactly the same size and the text is exactly the same, I think that that's not the ideal way to do it, right? So I think that, in a video platform, you want to make sure that you have really vibrant video content, and you might be able to write a little bit more in the text description. But then if you go to a more static or a mobile experience, it should be optimized for mobile. Just as if you're a large brand, if you're looking at a billboard, that's a different experience too. So I just think that all of your content really should be optimized to fit the channel, and each channel is a part of that is a part of a larger story. So it's not like the same story you're telling on it's like going to like an Omnimax or an IMAX movie. It's like a broad picture of one cohesive story, and it complements that entire story is the biggest challenge I face, at least.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's translation to make it appropriate for the different channels and still tied together. That makes sense. Mary, any other additional comments?
No, I mean, I would definitely piggyback on what Jenny said. I think, one of those challenges is, utilizing so many channels while trying to keep that messaging, the message continuity. You obviously don't want to use boilerplate content. You want to make sure that your call to action is appropriate on each channel. And, so there's a nuance that's there. And so it's making sure too, you have the right people in place and you're able to operationalize it internally, to make sure that it's working and you're testing it and you're continually evolving it and not just letting it be and saying, oh, this is working, but making sure that you're consistent with knowing what the challenges are and, and addressing them head on.
Yeah, it's like the flow, life flow that they're in. You have to be moment appropriate within those. Great. So how do you ensure that certain touch points don't create a spamming experience for customers or create a frustrating user experience for them? Let's start with you, Mary, again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you need to be the customer. I mean, you need to go in there, you need to see what that experience looks like, and you need to have other people do it as well. So your team should be well aware of what it looks like from a customer standpoint. You should all be customers and you should all be getting the emails or the texts or whatever that looks like. And if it's annoying you, it's certainly annoying your consumer. And then ask them. I mean, I think we all know the importance of consumer feedback. So, ask, find out. They'll tell you. So, I certainly think that, making sure that you are consistent and that you, again, it's constantly evolving and you're constantly testing and making sure that you're not spamming people, because we all know how many times do we disengage with someone personally, whether it's a company or person, because they are a little bit too, much in their approach. So we don't want that to be us either. It's good, finding good balance.
That's great, Mary. I think we used to call that eating your own dog food. Mike, your thoughts?
I would never eat dog food. But along those veins, no, again, I agree with everything that Mary said. B2B angle aside here again, but there's a lot of similarity in a lot of the things that apply to both B2C and B2B. It comes down to, I always think that process is so much more important than the technology in this case, because I find a lot of people, a lot of teams sometimes think about, oh, we need to buy this platform or that platform. And in reality, if you don't have the internal process to do the due diligence, none of that's going to save you, right? So on the B2B side, there are certain B2B or B2C, your customer-centric rules of engagement are just extremely important. And then how you implement those and do you implement those well will determine whether or not you succeed or fail. For B2B, for example, a lot of it comes down to if your brand manages by account or by salesperson or by a customer service agent that's dedicated to an account. And what is the balance of marketing messages that touch that client or customer or people that are part of that brand versus the sales team that owns it or the account team that owns it? And establishing that balance. I've seen some brands just say, hey, no message goes to this account unless it's through the human being that owns it. And that's a valid decision to make if that makes the most sense for your product line and for the relationship you have with your customer. And I've seen others that are more balanced, that have sort of limited marketing messaging. Sometimes it's product related, V2.0, such and such a SaaS service is coming out. That might not be delivered by the sales or account person, it might be marketing. But in other words, it really finding the right balance between your marketing automated stuff and your human delivered stuff is absolutely important to get right. The other thing that's really important, and again, this is both B2B and B2C, is when you have a really critically valuable target ICP, your ideal customer profile, and multiple business units or teams are targeting that same profile, that's another challenge, right? And that's a huge potential for spam. And again, it's those rules of engagement that have to be built in where someone isn't being hit or tagged or messaged by 5 different products or services from the same company, which is attractive. There's certainly an attraction to do that, but you have to prevent it. And it's all about being customer centric about it. And I'll share one story. At IBM, when I was there 6 years ago, I remember this was both great and frustrating. I remember coming back from an event that generated something like 2,000 leads. We were very excited about that. But then when we started running this batch of leads through all the different filters and restrictions, these can't be touched because they're owned by these account teams, and these ladder up to brands that are already being communicated through here, and these have already received an email in the last 30 days. we found that was significantly reduced to like 100 or 200. But that's just that while that was frustrating, it's also protecting your customer in the right way and with the right intent. So not easy to do, but so important to do.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. The next question, I think we're actually got a question from the crowd, and I think we're going to pull that into this this question that we had. And it is just, how can you provide customers with multiple channels of communication? So irrespective of which device they choose to use, how can you provide them with those multiple channels without making that experience difficult or harrowing? Maybe even find a way to employ strategies to meet customers where they are and surprise them and delight them. Jenny, let's start with you.
So I think it's really important for me, the channel is really important, and to know what the experience is like is that in that channel is really important. And I think this is where listening and monitoring to any sort of social, like conversations or chatter or any kind of comments it can be really, really key, because your customers will tell you if something is not a good experience or if something can be better. But if you ignore it, then it's just gonna continue to be a bad experience. But you can make that into a positive experience, or a way to show that you value your customers' feedback or value your customers, that their experience, right? And that you want to make it, there are lots of ways to make it better. So I think that it's important to really test test the quality of the content, test what you're trying to do. If not, and then even afterwards to continue getting feedback and improving on things, I think is sort of the best direction I can provide.
Mm-hmm. That's great. No, and even, I don't want to go all IDEO, but even co-creating with customers to make sure that the use of the channel is appropriate to how they utilize it and what they're looking for out of those channels. That's great. Mike, what else should we think about?
Yeah, I find personally and professionally, experiences can get pretty harrowing when you either just ask too many questions in too short a window of time, or you hit someone with a message via too many channels, again, within too short a window of time. And so here again, it's like, it's this balance again, right? I'm going to be very non-committal as I avoid the dog food. How do you capture preferences and get the direction from your customer that you want, that'll help you deliver better service without annoying the crap out of them? Because especially in that first experience, which is so critical, right? Those first few days will determine whether or not someone comes back or becomes a client, whether you're talking about B2C or B2B. So that's really challenging. And I think a lot of it is, if we're talking really tactically, for example, the lead channel through which someone converted is probably the one to start with, and then finding incremental, gentle opportunities to add others if and as appropriate. And that's a nice slow way and gentle way of adding preferences to your database and to what you know about that customer. And as far as incorporating multiple channels to your portfolio of touch points with which you reach out to this customer with, again, same thing, probably spacing those out. Like, we all realize, hey, an email will start seeing a decrease in response rate over time. So I'd like to use a different channel, maybe SMS, maybe something else. But you probably don't want to blast on all cylinders in one day. You might want to try email a little bit, maybe try then text a little bit after that, and have cascading work streams in that way. Now, that, again, easy to say, hard to do. It's hard to program that in at scale. But these are the kinds of things to balance and consider as you're building your engagement plan for your customer base.
Great advice on the orchestration, which is the hard part for sure of this experience design. Like I said before, generative AI is definitely on everybody's mind. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on chatbots and other AI applications and how we might best utilize them. Can we use them to limit customer frustration when they're seeking help, as opposed to feeling stuck with bots? Mary, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI has given us better chatbots, than maybe some of the ones that we were used to, several years ago, which was an extremely, regardless of what you were looking for, always a pretty frustrating experience. I think from like, a healthcare example, when you're navigating a large, maybe complicated, healthcare website, and you're looking for something that's pretty particular, a chat bot can be there to help you find what you're looking for. It could help you navigate, different blog content and other things on the site. I think where it gets problematic, and we haven't really perfected it, and I haven't seen anybody really perfect it yet, is when we try to utilize it from a real customer service standpoint. When you have a problem or an issue and you're trying to engage, I think the companies that seem to do it best are the ones that will quickly and seamlessly get you from that chat bot to a person in real life, to minimize the frustration. So I certainly think that having that kind of seamless, where you can put representative in there and you are connected with someone, rather than, a whole, text of back and forth with a chat bot when you're trying to settle an issue. I think, knowing where it's helpful, probably the navigation side, and then where it's not helpful, really on the issues, kind of hardcore customer service piece.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mary. Mike, what do you suggest?
I couldn't agree more with what Mary just shared. I mean, in my personal experiences, I find if I have questions about my account, for sure, I rarely do I find a chatbot that can satisfy that. That's just so hard to do. Because if it wasn't a challenging and unique question, I probably wouldn't be calling about it or searching for an answer to it, because I would know the answer. But that said, and Mary touched on this also, but having an easy way to get in touch with a human being is really important. Again, B2B, much easier to do than B2C. If you have masses and masses of people that you serve with a product of some kind, very difficult to do at scale. So understand that that's a unique challenge. But in the B2B world, and even in B2C world, having a drive to a human being is so important early on, so that you don't get someone who will just escalate to a point of just anger. And that actually, it's funny, most chatbots, they've just gotten so much better over the last year. It's been incredible. But only a month ago, I ran into one, and I wish I could remember who it was. Not that I would out them, but I encountered the most tone-deaf chatbot I've ever encountered in my life, to the point where I couldn't get it to react or apologize in any way. I started typing in words I don't normally type in to Windows, and I just couldn't get this thing to acknowledge in any way that I wasn't happy. And it was just unbelievable to me that that existed in today's day and age. So, but yeah, connection with a human being, avoid tone deafness. Testing is so important. I mean, test the crap out of it before you launch it and make it go live, and then monitor it over time to see if there are certain inquiries or keywords that are resulting in bounce or unhappy responses. Uncover and find those questions that your chatbot's having a challenge with, and help it, program it, feed it the information it needs to be as human as possible. That's what you got to do. Launching it when it's well developed, and monitoring it and optimizing it so it's better over time.
Great points. Thank you, Mike. Do you have, this is a question we just got in, do you guys have any tips for dealing with older customers? Are there silver surfers out there that are super adept at all the technology and all the different sorts of channels that we've now opened? Are there gray technophiles? Mary or Jenny, you guys want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to respond. I mean, there are always, I mean, there are some, like I would say, seniors that are just killing it on TikTok. They're so amazing and fun to watch. But if you're trying to reach a broad audience, I think that, you just have to come to the hard realization that it's like, you're not going to make them come to where you are. You have to go to where your audience is. And so if it's, and I found that to maybe an older or more senior, like the analog spaces are what they really prefer. You just have to, if it's multi-channel, like you have the advantage of going through a whole bunch of different channels. So I think you just have to explore everything, and how they prefer to be communicated. But if you do want to get buy-in, I think it's really important for you to understand that you shouldn't have a lot of text in your graphic images, or if you do use images, make sure that they can be seen easily on a mobile phone. Like a mobile screen is really small, and so you think of your audience and what they can read or what they can see or what they can understand, or make sure you provide alt text for your images so that seniors can use a screen reader, and it's a good experience for them. So I think that if you're gonna try to get any buy-in, you're really gonna have to make it be a really great experience for them, just like any other audience, really.
Yeah, it's really about sensitive design in your digital channels or electronic channels. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I would just add certainly to that we just still do direct mail and these other things that we are painful sometimes, but often we are serving an older population. But typically when we're looking at a marketing campaign to something that skews a little bit older, we're also including the people surrounding the seniors in our marketing. So we're doing a lot of digital that's really outreach to caregivers, grandchildren, and that really speaks to them. Because we do know that oftentimes they are a huge influence in their lives, and they may be the one that kind of drives them to the service. So typically when we're looking at our youngest and our oldest, we're also including, who is around that person and using them as part of our audience, and, really hoping to get the message to them as well. So that's the way we've incorporated them on digital.
Great. Excellent. We got another question in. I'd like to throw in here about how do you create that seamless connection between marketing, sales, and servicing for customers. So this is more plumbing. We're trying to create that great omni-channel experience, but how do you create those connections that enable your organization to respond in the right way? Let's start on the B2B side. Mike?
Yeah, happy to jump in here. So this is so close to my heart. And it's at all of the companies I've worked at, from IBM to Silicon Valley Bank to MasterCard. Because if you don't have everything aligned between those teams, it's just things are going to be difficult and things will fall through the cracks. What we try to do, ideally, is when you're launching a new product, when you're launching a new service, or even when you're launching a new campaign, whatever it is that you're going to market with that's new, you're almost working together on a whiteboard to first envision the journey together and understand where leads, customers, clients, prospects move back and forth between the sales funnel and the marketing funnel. Where does it happen? Where do they get qualified? Where do they get reached out to? At what point should a human being reach out? Mapping that all together in an aligned way is so important, and setting your objectives up for the campaign. So for example, you can set up service level agreements, if you will, SLAs. Hey, once this, these are the specific factors that'll qualify this lead, which then gets sales on board. Then sales wants to know, okay, how many times do I call, email this person? What do I guarantee that I'm going to do? Et cetera, et cetera. So having an aligned view of what the experience should be and what the outreach should be and what the communications patterns should be is just so important to do at the outset. And that sort of makes sure that both parties' interests, which are slightly different, they're aligned, we're all on the same team, right? But they're also slightly different, are working in tandem in synchronicity. It's just, it's not easy to do, but a lot of it is process. And again, it's process over technology. It's getting agreement between teams. Hopefully you have leaders that are good at making that happen. Hopefully you can encourage that kind of collaboration, document it, commit to it. And then when you launch it, it's reporting on it. So having some kind of dashboard that shows those different transfer points throughout the funnel, so you can together judge in an aligned way, hey, is this working or not working? Where do we need to improve this process?
Oh, that's a great answer, Mike. Clarity, responsibility really is driving the clarity of that view of the customer journey and what each stakeholder is trying to do, so that everybody who's got those interactions knows exactly what that goal is for that customer, for each one of those stakeholders.
100%.
That's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anything else, Mary?
No, I would just say that, I worked somewhere once where, and what Mike said with its process over technology could not be truer, where, they invested in this huge CRM. It was going to bring everybody together and, this is going to work. But the process broke down. And so the technology, although there's great technologies out there, isn't going to work if you don't have the process. So I definitely, from firsthand experience, have seen that happen, and all that is frustrating for both internal and external stakeholders. So process is key in, you know, making that seamless connection between the teams.
Great.
If I can actually add to that, so like sometimes I think that's a culture question more than anything else, because you know, I've been to places where, like, you know, you've got your elder like salespeople that have been there for ages and they don't believe social media is helpful because they don't like social media or use social media personally. And then there are like marketing teams. I think they're the more important marketing team over social. Then social teams get like upset because like they don't get what they need from marketing. So I feel like it's a little bit of like sometimes egos, like you know, like and belief that they're the most important thing. And in those spaces, I've always played to people's egos. Like this is where like relationship building is really, really important. Like you know, and if it's that's why if you have leadership that can like break these silos for you, that's great. But then if you don't have support for leadership, like I've had to like, I've bought coffee for so many people and said, wow, that's such a great idea. And that's such a great sales idea. But, you know, if we post it on social, you know, your last idea got like 40 likes, and that will lead to like, I've really had to do a lot of education and, you know, stroking of egos and things like that to like sort of like get on the same page. So sometimes it's hard, and it's more like a culture question. And if you just get that salesperson that hates social and doesn't want to, you can't do anything about it. But I think it you know, by building relationships, you can kind of break down those silos.
I think we just coined something. I think we just coined collaboration experience drives excellence and customer experience. Maybe. So maybe there's a better way to state it, but I do
Sure.
believe, I think you're absolutely right, Jenny. I think culture drives a lot of it. And great culture will often yield great experiences at the end of the day when done
Yeah,
right.
that's true. Because there are even some companies that might have a culture where they don't want to have all that clarity on exactly what the specifics. They don't want to open up and share sort of data or share ownership of a customer experience, and that would require a whole culture shift for some organizations. So yeah, great points. Let's project into the future now. Is omnichannel the future of customer experience? We know the collaboration experience now drives it. So is omnichannel the future? And if so, what's in store for this next year and maybe even beyond? Mike, start us off.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's so it certainly is the future. I think it's also the present, and it has been the past. You know, I think there's no on and off switch for when something is omnichannel or not. I think we've all been playing that game for as much as possible. But the reality is, channels will continue to change every year or two. There's a new channel, a new social network, a new Web3 blockchain thingamajig, and we'll have to adapt and incorporate what we think is relevant to our audience. So there will always be work to be done to improve and optimize your omnichannel portfolio, and to continuously make it better, because in reality, your customers' expectations change and just change. Sometimes it's not that expectations get harder or higher barred always. Well, a lot of people say that, but not always. But they just differ and change. In the same way that subject line best practices in emails will work one year and not the next, because people just get used to something or bored of it or start ignoring it. And sometimes the same is for channels, where your preferences change over time, where one year you might like email, one year you might like text. So it's just important to create sort of a moldable, adaptable foundation that can roll with that.
Right. Great. Thank you, Mike. Jenny, what do you think? Is it the future?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with Mike. I feel like it's our present. But I think something in the future that we might see more of is, I think that the channels are going to niche down and not all be digital, but in person too. I'll just give an example of one that I like is my favorite thing right now, is that at my train stop, in my commuter train stop, and they do have like these like sort of like analog poster billboard type things. They're so old school. But they switched them out recently, and there's a new restaurant that's sort of just a half a block away, and that restaurant put up posters that says, they said dinner is just 50 steps away from here. And it was so clever, you know, and then they have the QR code. So like you can see that, and then you can, you know, look at the menu, and then you can walk up. I just thought, I'm like, this is like my favorite promo right now. So I really think that like when you can really make the experience, niche the experience to make it very, very personal, because that's a very small audience segment, you know, people who are getting off the train and walking up, you know, to get back onto the street. I think you're gonna see more of that. At least I hope to see more of that.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. This is great. We got time for one more question from the audience that people have offered to us. Sorry, we're not going to probably get to every one of the questions, but we'll get into as many of them as we can. This question came in asking, what role does data analytics play in optimizing the experiences for omnichannel experiences? And how can we leverage insights from those customers to refine and tailor our multi-channel approach? I'm going to just go back to you, maybe, Jenny, with some thoughts on data analytics playing.
I love reading data. I can just get lost in reading the data, because there's so much you can learn from what's working and what's not working. And I always try to think what's working and what was this about this campaign or content that worked, and how I can stretch that to other channels. Like, so how I can reimagine that piece of content to work in our other channels. So I think data is what tells, you know, it, as the communicators or the ones looking at the data, it's up to us to tell the stories of the data. And when you're trying to convince that really stubborn person in sales, you can bring them data. If you always lead with the data, that's hard to argue against and say, well, you know, the data shows that without this experience, you know, or it helped boost your sales, whatever it is. But I think that, you know, it's as the bearers of the data, it's important to tell the right stories, and I think that goes really, really far.
Oh, that's a great point, because using data makes the story less sort of subjective, much more objective from the view of this is exactly what's happening within that organization. That's great. Mary, what do you think?
I think data gives you the ability to be nimble and make changes when they need to be changed. So you're looking at your website, you can see if somebody, you know, if your customers are getting stuck somewhere, or if the journey for them is, you know, harrowing and not seamless. You can see that by using data. And I think you're able to make those changes almost immediately, where in the past, where, you know, your data wasn't, you know, as robust, you were kind of, you know, guessing and left in the dark. You know, it's the same on social and on other channels. You really can utilize that data to make those changes that need to be changed that help further the customer experience and make things better for the customer. And I definitely agree with Jenny. I think sometimes when I'm talking to perhaps a clinician or somebody who's asking a question as to why something is a certain way in a campaign, and you know, why we use certain keywords and not others. And, you know, we use data to really tell us, you know, what we need to do. And having that data in front of us and being able to say, here's why we're doing it this way is much more helpful than just saying, you know, we're marketing and, you know, that's how we do it. But having a nice way to explain to people why you do something and being data driven, I think, you know, you can show the results right then and there. So I think it's really important.
That's great. Mike, I can't imagine that MasterCard cares about data, but do you have anything to say?
No, we don't care about data. I mean, of course, on the consumer side, which I'm less engaged with, cares copious amounts about data. I'll speak to B2B because I don't want to purport to be an expert in that. But on the B2B side, you know, there's something to be said for scale of data, which makes it easier to find trends and respond to them and act on them. And sometimes for B2B marketing, it's a little harder because the scale of engagement is so small that it's hard to make conclusive decisions around, you know, what should the copy be here? What kind of image should we be using here? In my B2C days, I remember running multivariate tests where we could run 4 tests at the same time because the data coming in was just so vast. Amazon can conduct a 1 million person A/B test in 10 minutes. In B2B marketing, you might take a year to do something like that. So data is still, that said, great for example, targeting criteria, signaling behavioral interest in a product or a solution or a pain point or a challenge. That's where I've personally find data being the most useful. It's serving me as the marketer to find my customer and to find somebody who's like already raising their hand or on the verge of doing that. As far as using data to guide the experience optimization, that's a lot harder, but in that case, data comes in the form of surveys, right? It's less about digital data and like like digital analytics, and it's more about if we poll 200 of our, or 100 even of our customers, or even just 20, we can get some great qualitative insights about what they like and don't like. And that's something magical that you can't always do at the consumer level, because sometimes your customer base is just so vast. You can't survey 20 people and really extrapolate that to represent everybody. Whereas at the B2B level, you kind of can. In fact, I think it was usertesting.com is a great example where they recommend that you just send 6 to 8 people through a journey, and be sufficient to give you great feedback to cover 90% of the challenges you have. And I find that to be very true with B2B survey conducting. So surveys are just absolutely gold for measuring dissatisfaction or lack thereof, for identifying challenges and pain points for clients that you have.
That's great. So we use data to tell the story, data to help us pivot quickly, and data for how we learn and just get better with the customer. That's great. Fantastic. Really appreciate all of your thoughts. I would love it if you could just share your final thoughts on Omnichannel with us. And we're going to start off with Jenny.
I would say just remember that it shouldn't feel, the content, the experience should make you feel something. I feel like content should never make you feel like we're selling you something. So just remember, I'll just go back to during the Olympics. I think the Procter and Gamble always puts on a commercial where it's like, "Thank your moms," and I'm always like, "Ooh," like crying at the end of the day. And then I'm like, I need to call my mom. I mean, that's sort of like, you want to have a really, really great experience. And I would just say that's really important.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. Mike.
Yeah, love that actually, Jenny, because 100%, there's always a human being at the other end of the line, and remembering that. I think my cat just knocked something over. Sorry, distracting. Is there a big bang? There's a human end at the end of the line, and they have emotions and opinions and egos. And you need to take that into consideration when you're building your experience. You can appeal to that, and you can move the needle with regards to how they engage with your company. 3 things total. The second thing I would want to mention is, and this is, I would say B2B marketers are sometimes more guilty of this than B2C marketers, but after the sale is made, really investing in that client experience afterwards. It's just so important to keep that customer, to maintain them, to make sure they're happy. And that's easy to forget because you've worked so hard to drive the signing of a contract, and it's easy to forget to do. And then lastly, process over technology. Process with technology, even better, because it's more at scale. It'll be smarter and more instant and automated, but process has to happen first. Make sure you're making great decisions about what is best for your client or customer, and use the technology to implement it. That'll work every time, almost every time.
Hey. Yeah, almost every time. Great. Thank you, Mike. Mary, your last thoughts.
Yeah, I will end the same way I started, and it's, don't forget about the basics. I think when we're excited about new technology, we're excited about new campaigns, sometimes it's easy to forget, that how important that brand is, and how a strong brand is going to create that trust and bring in those customers, and not to lose that when you're kind of going again, if you're used to doing a multi-channel campaign and moving to omni-channel, with so many different channels, it's, certainly making sure that there's consistency and trust there, but also, making sure that, you're not using boilerplate, terminology, and you're not, and you have the right call to action for each channel. But yeah, I would take it back to basics, and don't forget about those, because they're so important.
Excellent reminder. Thank you, Mary. And with that, I would just want to say thank you to our distinguished panel and to all of you for joining us. We hope that we've been able to share a little bit about what we think we can do to move forward in our relationships with customers, how we can collaborate and design an experience in the context of the workflow and life flow of our customers and give them that universally consistent, accessible experience that's appropriate for their journey. Thank you so much for listening. And back to you, Nick.
And thank you all for such an insightful and amazing panel discussion. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. This officially concludes the event. Thank you again for joining us today and engaging in our content. Have a great rest of your day.